Rap mogul Jay-Z is denying allegations he assaulted a 13-year-old girl alongside rapper Sean Diddy Combs. That civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by
Beyoncé, and Jay-Z will do anything to destroy anyone who speaks out against.
Ladies and gentlemen, she's a lot of things. She's spectacular, actually.
Yes.
And congratulations on new mamahood.
Yes.
Part of the indictment, that's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak offs. So that's federal. That could be that's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
What if the woman you once called your inspiration turned out to be your greatest betrayal? In an industry ruled by silent pacts, backroom deals, and power plays, Rihanna has shattered the code of silence with a series of bombshell revelations that have sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The billionaire, mogul, and musical icon isn't just spilling tea, she's detonating it. Allegations of betrayal, coercion, and even sabotage point squarely at Beyoncé, Jay-Z, and their longtime associate Diddy. Once allies, now adversaries in what is quickly becoming the most scandalous unraveling of power in the entertainment world. This isn't just drama, it's a reckoning. And Rihanna? She's done playing nice. Once upon a time, Rihanna was the industry's golden girl, plucked from Barbados and catapulted to global stardom, thanks in large part to her fairy godfather, Jay-Z. And standing like a queen at his side? None other than Beyoncé. In those early days, Rihanna didn't just admire Beyoncé, she worshipped her. She called her a role model, a goddess, a blueprint. And for a while, Beyoncé seemed to embrace the praise, smiling as the media crowned Rihanna the next big thing. But behind the flashbulbs and fake hugs, a storm was brewing. Rihanna entered the music industry through Jay-Z's Rockefeller pipeline, a machine designed to mold megastars. But even as Jay-Z signed her and shepherded her early success, whispers began. Was he just building a younger, edgier version of Beyoncé? One he could control? One who wouldn't challenge his throne or his wife's? At first, Rihanna played her part. She stayed in her lane, sang her songs, and paid her dues. But success changed everything. Hit after hit, Umbrella, Disturbia, Rude Boy, and suddenly Rihanna wasn't just Beyoncé's little sister in stardom. She was a threat. And that's when the energy shifted. Insiders began noticing tension behind the scenes. Joint appearances got canceled. Public praise turned into carefully crafted silence. Beyoncé, once quick to uplift female artists, started giving Rihanna the cold shoulder. And Rihanna? She stopped pretending. The admiration she once had for Beyoncé soured into something darker, resentment, maybe even rivalry. She stopped biting her tongue in interviews. Her music got bolder, more defiant. The message was clear. She didn't want to be Beyoncé. She wanted to dethrone her. And Jay-Z, caught in the middle, watching as his protege and his queen started circling each other like predators in the same jungle. Because in an industry built on image and loyalty, there's only room for one lioness at the top. And Rihanna was done bowing. For years, the world saw Rihanna as Jay-Z's prized protege. But behind the polished photos and award show smiles, something far more troubling was unfolding. According to sources close to the singer, Rihanna wasn't just navigating the pressures of fame. She was surviving the unwanted attention of the very man who launched her career. Rumors began to surface that Jay-Z's mentorship came with boundaries Rihanna was expected not to cross, and behavior she was expected to tolerate. Whispers of inappropriate comments, uninvited advances, and a power dynamic too lopsided to challenge began swirling within industry circles. Rihanna, young and new to the game, was allegedly told to keep quiet, that this was how things worked, that speaking out would mean exile, not just from Roc Nation, but from the industry itself. And Beyoncé, the woman Rihanna once idolized, she was there, present, watching, silent. Some insiders claim Beyoncé wasn't blind to what was happening, that she saw the tensions, the looks, the proximity. But rather than intervene, She allegedly chose to protect the brand, the empire she and Jay-Z had built, over the well-being of a rising star in their orbit. That betrayal cut deeper than anything else. Because for Rihanna, the silence from someone she once called a hero wasn't just complicity, it was confirmation. Confirmation that in this world, loyalty to power trumped loyalty to women. But the darkest revelation was yet to come. Behind closed doors, Rihanna allegedly discovered the true depths of the industry's rot, exclusive, invite-only gatherings whispered about by insiders as freak-offs. Hosted by none other than Diddy Combs, these parties weren't just Hollywood social mixers. They were, according to some accounts, playgrounds for the elite. A place where boundaries were blurred, consent was murky, and careers could be made or destroyed, depending on who you entertained. Sources say Rihanna was invited, even pressured, to attend. But she refused. She didn't play the game. And that decision, it came with consequences. She was iced out of opportunities, smeared behind the scenes, and made to feel like she was difficult, uncooperative, a problem. And the ones pulling the strings? The same powerful trio, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and Diddy, who appeared to run the industry like a private club. Beneath the glamour, beneath the flawless Instagram posts and diamond-studded performances, lived a system of control, silence, and fear. And Rihanna, once its darling, had dared to reject it. They called them freak-offs, private, ultra-exclusive parties whispered about in recording studios, boardrooms, and dressing rooms. To outsiders, they were glamorous get-togethers. But for those inside the music industry's inner circle, the truth was far more sinister. These weren't parties. They were power plays. Hosted by Diddy Combs and reportedly attended by some of the biggest names in music, including moguls, executives, and even A-list couples. These gatherings operated in the shadows of the spotlight. Invitations were coveted, but not out of excitement, out of fear. Because being invited meant you were on their radar. And declining? That could cost you everything. What happened at these freak-offs? Allegedly, anything. Sources claim they were filled with alcohol, drugs, and cameras. Always cameras, strategically placed in bedrooms, bathrooms, even closets. Guests were allegedly encouraged, sometimes pressured, to indulge. Nothing was off limits, and nothing was ever really private. Because those tapes, they didn't disappear. They were archived, and some say they were used as leverage. Insurance. A way to keep everyone in line. Rihanna got the invitation. Of course she did. By then, she was one of the most talked about women in the world. Young, beautiful, rebellious, and already stirring tension between Jay-Z and Beyoncé. To some, she was a rising star. To others, she was becoming a liability. But she refused. She didn't show up. She didn't play along. And that's when everything changed. Suddenly, Rihanna's image began to shift in the media. She was called difficult, uncontrollable, too edgy for endorsement deals. People in her camp began to distance themselves. And behind the scenes, some insiders claim she was blackballed, quietly but thoroughly. Opportunities vanished. Rumors circulated that she was unstable, hard to work with, even dangerous. But the most chilling claim? That she was being watched. That footage existed. Footage of her in vulnerable moments, private conversations, maybe even manipulated encounters, collected without her consent and used as a silent threat. Not just to control her, but to keep her quiet. Rihanna, however, didn't fold. Instead, she pulled back. She began operating on her own terms, outside the machine. She stopped releasing albums. She started building an empire, her empire. Savage x Fenty. Fenty Beauty. Billionaire status on her name, her vision. Not theirs. But the scars from the freak-off fallout remained. In refusing to participate, Rihanna may have saved her soul, but she paid for it with her industry innocence. She learned that fame came with a price. And when you don't obey the unspoken rules, the system doesn't just exclude you, it tries to erase you. And still, she didn't break. Because unlike the others, Rihanna didn't come to stay in the palace. She came to burn it down. For years, Beyoncé was the untouchable queen of the music world, the symbol of poise, power, and sisterhood. The woman every rising star looked up to, especially Rihanna, who once idolized her. But behind the flawless image and empowering lyrics, new whispers are surfacing. And they suggest that Beyoncé wasn't just complicit in Rihanna's exploitation. She may have been part of it. Rihanna's heartbreak wasn't just about the industry. It was personal, deeply personal. Sources close to her say the real pain didn't come from Jay-Z's behavior or Diddy's twisted circles. It came from Beyoncé's silence. Her strategic, soul-crushing silence. Because Beyoncé wasn't some distant, uninformed bystander. She was there. She saw. And according to insiders, she knew. One source described a moment backstage at a Roc Nation event. Rihanna had just brushed off another unwanted advance from Jay-Z. She looked shaken, vulnerable. Beyoncé reportedly walked by, caught her eye, and kept walking. No words, no support, just a cold glance. To Rihanna, that wasn't just rejection. It was confirmation that the queen had chosen her king over everything else. And then there's the cheesecake incident. To most fans, it was a harmless story. An old interview clip of Rihanna recalling how Beyoncé once gave her a slice of cheesecake at an award show when she was just starting out. At the time, Rihanna smiled while telling it. Grateful, nervous, starstruck. But now, that moment feels darker. Like a symbol. Like the way royalty tosses a crumb to a servant. Beyoncé, the reigning queen, offering a piece of dessert while knowing full well what her husband was doing behind the scenes. A smile, a slice, a performance. Rihanna reportedly rewatched that clip years later and broke down crying. I thought she was protecting me, she allegedly said. I didn't realize she was watching me drown. The heartbreak came not just from Beyoncé's inaction, but from the growing suspicion that Beyoncé may have enabled it all. That by protecting Jay-Z's brand, she preserved her own. That she chose power over sisterhood, empire over empathy. Some insiders go even further, claiming Beyoncé was part of the intimidation tactics, playing the role of the perfect wife to silence any woman who might speak out. Who would believe Rihanna if the world's most beloved woman stood by Jay-Z without question? But Rihanna saw through it. Eventually. And once she did, she walked away. Not just from Roc Nation, but from the illusion that any woman in power was automatically an ally. Because in this game, there are no girls. Only gatekeepers. Before the scandals, before the canceled festivals and public backlash, DaBaby was on fire. He was the industry's golden boy, co-signed by legends, topping charts, and popping up in collaborations with the biggest names in music. But behind that meteoric rise, insiders say, was something much darker. A system of grooming, coercion, and alleged manipulation orchestrated by music's most powerful elites. And right in the center of it all, Beyoncé and Diddy. Let's rewind to 2019. DaBaby was buzzing hard, and his star was rising faster than the industry could control. That's when the invitation started. Private meetings, industry mixers, and eventually freak-offs. According to whispers from industry insiders, Diddy had his eye on DaBaby, allegedly not just for his talent, but for his potential to be molded, seduced, and folded into the same cycle of submission and silence that had consumed so many before him. The most shocking claim? That Beyoncé herself was used as bait. Yes, Beyoncé. Not in the way most would expect, but as a symbol, a figure of power and seduction, carefully curated to lower defenses and draw DaBaby deeper into the system. One source recalls a private event. Invite only, phones confiscated, and cameras strategically placed, where Beyoncé allegedly gave DaBaby what they described as the royal treatment. Flirtatious energy, lingering eye contact, intimate conversation away from prying eyes. To an outsider, it might have looked like a harmless industry flirtation. But insiders claim it was a tactic, an initiation, a seduction wrapped in power, intended to make DaBaby feel chosen. And right behind her, Diddy, smiling, watching, allegedly waiting to make his move. Some claim DaBaby was encouraged that night to join the after-party, the real party, where things got darker, where contracts weren't the only things being signed, and reputations were leveraged like currency. One source chillingly said it wasn't about sex. It was about submission. They want to see if he'd fold. And he didn't. According to those close to the situation, DaBaby got spooked. He left. Quietly. Quickly. And that's when everything changed. The next year, his name started making headlines, but not the kind he wanted. Controversies exploded. Backlash escalated. Suddenly, the same industry that had crowned him king turned its back. Was it karma? Or was it punishment? Some believed DaBaby was never supposed to be a superstar. He was supposed to be a pawn, a product. And when he didn't play the game, they broke the board. As wild as it sounds, this isn't the first time we've heard stories like this. Promising artists, especially young black men, being allegedly lured, tested, and discarded if they didn't obey the rules of an elite freak-off culture that thrives on secrets, control, and humiliation. And this time, the allegations cut even deeper because they hint at Beyoncé's participation. Not as a victim, but as a recruiter. DaBaby never named names. He never told the full story, but his silence speaks volumes. And the look in his eyes when certain questions come up, that says everything. It was supposed to be Rihanna's triumphant return. After years of silence, emotional healing, and battles behind the scenes, ANTI was her most personal body of work yet. An album that broke away from industry expectations and proved she wasn't just a hitmaker. She was an artist, a visionary. And for the first time, she wasn't chasing charts. She was chasing liberation. But then it leaked. On January 27, 2016, with no warning, Rihanna's ANTI album mysteriously appeared on Tidal, Jay-Z's streaming platform. Not just early, not just without promo, but unfinished. A botched rollout, an unauthorized upload, and within hours it was gone. Re-uploaded, corrected, rebranded as a surprise drop. But the damage was done. The public narrative was chaos. Confusion. Fans didn't know what was happening. Industry watchers called it a flop. And Rihanna, who had meticulously crafted her most vulnerable project yet, was left scrambling to pick up the pieces of a launch she didn't control. Here's the kicker. Tidal was owned by Jay-Z, her former mentor, her former label head, the same man she was quietly pulling away from behind the scenes. And even though the company blamed a technical error, sources now say the so-called mistake may have been anything but. Multiple insiders allege that the leak wasn't accidental. It was sabotage. Let's connect the dots. Rihanna had just left Roc Nation's management. She was no longer under Jay-Z's thumb. ANTI marked her first major release with full creative control. She wasn't just walking away. She was building something without him. And in an industry built on control and loyalty, that made her dangerous. The theory? Jay-Z, and by extension, Beyoncé, needed to dim her light before she outshined theirs. Because just a few months later, Lemonade dropped. A visual album, a cultural reset. And while ANTI was still climbing slowly, quietly becoming a cult classic, Lemonade exploded overnight. It dominated headlines, awards, think pieces. And Beyoncé, backed by the very machine Rihanna had just escaped, reclaimed her throne. Was it all a coincidence? The mistimed leak, the cold rollout, the suspiciously overlapping marketing campaigns? Or was it calculated? Some fans now point to subtle jabs in Lemonade. Lyrics about Becky with the good hair, visuals of a woman smashing a world that once held her back. It was Beyoncé reclaiming her pain. But was it also a message? That she would not be dethroned. Not by anyone. Not even Rihanna. The ANTI era should have been Rihanna's coronation. Instead, it was marred by confusion, corporate betrayal, and a media blackout eerily out of sync with her stardom. Years later, ANTI would be recognized for what it truly was, a masterpiece ahead of its time. But at the moment of its birth, someone pulled the rug from underneath her. Someone who knew the exact time, the exact platform, the exact way to shake her confidence and rewrite the headlines. And that someone might have been sitting on a throne of their own, wearing a crown they didn't want to share. Because in the kingdom of music royalty, there's no room for two queens. In an industry obsessed with unity among black women, Beyoncé and Rihanna were always portrayed as allies, two queens reigning in their own lanes. But behind the matching smiles and industry pleasantries, the tension was palpable. And if you read between the lines, their rivalry was hiding in plain sight. Let's start with 2013. Beyoncé drops Bow Down, a gritty, aggressive departure from her polished pop persona. The message? Crystal clear, bow down, bitches. It was a warning shot to every woman daring to step into her territory. Fans heard it as empowerment. But industry insiders clocked the subtext. This wasn't just about haters. It was about competitors. And at the top of that list? Rihanna. Why Rihanna? Because by that time, Rihanna had quietly started doing something unforgivable in Beyoncé's world. She stopped playing the game. She ditched the ballots. She stopped chasing Grammy validation. She embraced weed, rebellion, and full creative control. And the industry still couldn't get enough of her. Rihanna's independence was a threat. Her image, a fusion of bad girl grit and high fashion elegance, stood in stark contrast to Beyoncé's carefully curated perfection. Where Beyoncé was mystery and precision, Rihanna was raw and unfiltered. And the public loved her for it. That's when the subliminals started flying. In Bow Down, Beyoncé snarls at unnamed women who ain't even half of me. Fans assumed it was about generic haters. But Rihanna's social media presence at the time was hard to ignore. Her Twitter fingers were active. Her Instagram captions were sharp. And she never shied away from poking the queen. In one now-deleted post, Rihanna uploaded a photo with the caption, "There's a difference between a star and a legend. Be careful who you shade." Fans quickly decoded it as a response to Beyoncé's Bow Down. And when one of her followers asked if she was throwing shade, Rihanna simply liked the comment and moved on. Silence says everything. Then came the Tidal press conference in 2015. It was supposed to be a celebration of artists reclaiming ownership in the streaming era. Jay-Z gathered the elite. Beyoncé, Madonna, Nicki Minaj, Daft Punk, and yes, Rihanna. But that photo op told a different story. Beyoncé and Rihanna stood at opposite ends of the stage. No eye contact, no hug, no interaction. And when the press asked about collaborations between the two, the room went cold. One insider said, that wasn't just awkward. That was icy. Beyoncé reportedly avoided Rihanna the entire event. Rihanna, in return, gave a stiff smile and made her exit as soon as she could. And guess what? Within weeks, whispers of friction behind the scenes grew louder. Rihanna's team was allegedly instructed to keep her branding separate from Beyoncé's. No joint interviews. No collaborative performances. The irony? Tidal was owned by Jay-Z, the man who discovered Rihanna, mentored her, and married Beyoncé. And as Rihanna's independence grew, so did the cracks in that power triangle. Rihanna refused to bow down. She built Fenty. She pulled back from music. She created her own empire outside of Beyoncé's orbit. And in doing so, she did the one thing no other pop girl dared to do. She outgrew the industry Beyoncé helped gatekeep. Fans still debate whether Beyoncé ever truly viewed Rihanna as a threat. But one thing's clear, whenever Rihanna shined, Beyoncé got louder. More aggressive, more polished. It was competition dressed as coincidence. And every time Beyoncé took a step forward, Rihanna simply lit a match and walked away. Because while Beyoncé was the blueprint, Rihanna was the wild card. And the industry doesn't know what to do with a queen who doesn't play chess at all. The gloves are off. And what started as whispers in the industry has exploded into a full-on cultural reckoning. Team Rihanna versus Team Beyoncé. Two fan bases, two ideologies, and one undeniable truth. The people are choosing sides. It didn't happen overnight. For years, the tension simmered beneath the surface. Subliminal lyrics, shady tweets, strategic silence. But as Rihanna's Fenty empire skyrocketed and Beyoncé's tightly controlled image began to feel predictable, something shifted. The public started to look closer. And what they saw triggered an avalanche of fan-led investigations, viral threads, and hashtags that refused to die. Hashtag Justice for Entai. Hashtag Let Rihanna Be Great. Hashtag Fenty Over Formation. These weren't just tweets. They were digital battlegrounds. Because for the first time, fans weren't just standing, they were digging, rewatching interviews, decoding lyrics, pulling receipts from 2013, 2016, even as far back as 2005. The question wasn't just, did Beyoncé throw shade? It became, Has Beyoncé been blocking Rihanna all along? And let's be clear, this isn't about pitting women against each other. This is about power, visibility, narrative control. Because while Beyoncé's legacy is built on perfection and polish, Rihanna's is rooted in rebellion. And fans are tired of watching the rebellious one get erased. When Fenty broke records, becoming the first black-owned beauty brand to reach $1 billion valuation, there was silence from Beyoncé's camp. No congratulatory post, no acknowledgement, and fans clocked it loudly when Rihanna became the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. Crickets. Yet every Beyoncé drop was instantly hailed as genius. Every visual, groundbreaking. Every whisper turned into gospel. Meanwhile, Rihanna, the girl from Barbados who turned her pain into power, was quietly rewriting the rules. No album, no rollout, no validation needed. The fanbase split became unavoidable. On one side, the Bayhive, loyal, organized, militant in their support. On the other, the Navy, scrappy, sarcastic, and unbothered, mirroring Rihanna's own refusal to conform. But what's interesting is this. The general public, they're moving toward Rihanna. Because in a world that's grown tired of curated perfection, Rihanna represents freedom. She built Fenty not just as a brand, but as a cultural reset. Inclusive, rebellious, and unapologetically black, but not beholden to industry gatekeepers. And the more people learned about the allegedly strained ties between her and Beyoncé, the more they started asking, has Beyoncé been holding the door shut while pretending to hold it open? The reckoning isn't just online, it's in the numbers. Rihanna hasn't released a studio album since 2016, and yet her relevancy has only grown. Her Super Bowl performance? The most watched halftime show of all time. Her Savage X Fenty fashion shows? Outshining Victoria's Secret with ease. She's not just surviving without the industry's blessing. She's dominating. Meanwhile, Beyoncé's every move is now under a microscope. Each calculated drop, each rare interview, each carefully staged moment. Fans are beginning to ask, is the queen out of touch? Because while Beyoncé built a kingdom, Rihanna started a revolution. And the fans? They're no longer content with crowns and choreography. They want authenticity. They want power that liberates, not power that controls. And in this cultural tug-of-war, the tides are turning. The age of blind loyalty is over. And the Navy? They're not just choosing sides. They're rewriting the script. Now that the curtain's been pulled back and the whispers have erupted into screams, we're left with one question. What happens next? Because this isn't just a feud. This is a reckoning. And the people at the center, Beyoncé, Jay-Z, and even Diddy, aren't used to being questioned. They're used to controlling the narrative. But now, the internet is writing it for them. The silence has already begun. Beyoncé, ever the tactician, says nothing. No subtweets, no captions, no reaction. She's always known the power of withholding. Her silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. If she speaks, she validates the conversation. If she ignores it, she stays above it. That's her weapon, royal distance. But this time, it may not be enough. Because the fans are connecting dots. The era of unbothered glamour is being drowned out by calls for transparency and accountability. And Jay-Z? His name is suddenly back in everyone's mouth. Not for music, not for Roc Nation's sports deals, but for his fingerprints in the power structure now being questioned. His role in managing Rihanna's early career. His ties to Diddy, who's currently facing the biggest federal investigation of his life. The internet is digging, and the shovels are sharp. Jay-Z helped shape Rihanna's rise, but when she stepped out of his shadow, the industry got quiet. Almost too quiet. Now fans are asking, was she being punished for choosing independence over obedience? As for Diddy, he's the wild card turned liability. The once untouchable mogul is now the subject of lawsuits, exposés, and federal raids. The walls are closing in, and his Rolodex of protectors is shrinking. If Diddy falls, he won't fall alone. And the people he partied with, partnered with, and protected, they know it. Which brings us to Rihanna. Because while Beyoncé shields herself in mystery and Diddy flails in scandal, Rihanna has remained calm, calculated, and unbothered. But don't mistake her silence for disengagement. The world is watching her next move like it's the final act of a drama that's been playing out for years. Will she speak? Will she call names? Or will she keep doing what she's always done? Disrupt from the outside, make history on her own terms, and let the empire burn behind her? There's a reason fans call her the real, unproblematic queen. Because while everyone else built power by playing the industry game, Rihanna walked away from the table and built her own. She doesn't need music to make noise. She doesn't need validation to stay relevant. And if she does return to music, after all this time, after all this silence, it won't just be a comeback. It'll be a statement. One that no shield, no PR machine, no carefully curated persona will be able to ignore. So buckle up, because whether it's silence, shielding, or showdown, one thing is certain. This story isn't over. Not by a long shot.